you have a questioning nature and a desire to nourish your essence within you have reached the realm of truth. Live from inner space, it's the next sequel to Interactive Enlightenment, brought to you by your host, Sevan Bomar. Enjoy non-stop breakthroughs, advanced knowledge, and self-discovery to the core of your very essence. Join us as we map the blueprint to the cosmos and dissolve the mysteries of the Matrix. You are now connected to the Keymaker.
Change is conflict. And I'll say that once again, change is conflict. That the moment that something needs to change, generally there's some type of friction that occurs before that to make it change. Even when you switch the light on, there's a friction that goes on between the terminals. There's a friction that goes on between even the plastic. So that friction it causes a change. So anything that you're looking at in life, you can see now if it's causing you a conflict that there's a change that is necessary. And we're encouraged to face those changes, seeing that we're constantly in a changing environment. Millions, if not billions of cells die in the body every day just to change you into what you're yet to become. But never let anyone narrow you down to something that's simple or something that what I would say is repetitive or something that doesn't have value and something that's unique. Right? We're all very, very unique. So never let anyone tell you that you don't have something very unique going on with you. There's no one size fits all in this. You have to find exactly how you can align yourself with your higher truth to experience what you need to experience in this reality. And the only thing that we offer is we offer great advice based on experience, and also based on things that we've learned every day and in our lives through spiritual journeys and through physical journeys that have helped us traverse the same terrain that you're traveling yourself. So for me, it's also been, I guess this is now the 6th or 7th year of looking deep into the occult nature of the reality. This comes from symbols. This comes from religious structures. This comes from secret societies. This comes from even science. It comes from fringe. So I've gathered all this information and also this experience to make more of an innovative approach to how we perceive what's going on in this reality, because let's just face it, no one with a presidential authority, let's say, or has a real title has actually come forward and said, hey, this is how we got here. This is the meaning to life. It's always left as a mystery, while most of these stations and these larger factions and groups only focus on just the minute problems of day-to-day life, which seem to be rather repetitive. So it does take courage to go out every single day or every single moment in your consciousness to find something new and to find the meaning of things when the mass majority around you have no clue and don't want to have a clue about it. And so one of the major things that I've noticed is that there's been a release of this energy that can be called dark matter energy into our reality. And that is what has shaken things up a bit. So if you're looking for a specific reason to why does it seem to be more chaotic? Why is there so much energy flying around? And it's because there's a lot of dark matter energy that is floating around, and few know how to utilize that energy. So we're going to talk about that tonight, because obviously the dark matter energy is something that the ancients were more familiar with and utilized in their creation process. In fact, it was the beginning of the creation process. It is the material that's used to begin the creation. It's the rough cut stone, if you may. And so what I found out is that this dark matter energy for us mainly translates into what we call sexual energy. It's very deep. It involves the creative force. So we can see in our world that clearly there is a great misuse of the sexual energy, as it is a great misuse of our creative energy. Meaning that if you look into military-industrial complex and even the science and laboratories, big pharma, big chemo, all this knowledge that they've discovered about the plants and the animals and the minerals and the elements have been abused and misused to create things that harm us and addict us. And so that creative energy is being misused. And that's been going on for a while. But what happens when you get so much of that energy? And then it begins to fill up the entire environment, and it can, in a certain sense, become maddening. So we can actually turn to the body, and we can turn to situations that people experience in everyday life. If you don't experience them personally, you will know someone who's experiencing this, to get real answers to how you balance out these energies, and also to confirm what I'm telling you today is actually true. And today, actually, I'm going to explain this through a theory that I've uncovered that I just call the Cannabis Theory. And I find it rather relative because there's a lot of cannabis use going on in the reality right now. And as you can see, the government is beginning to endorse it. And on all of the major outlets, you see it on CNN. And so we always have known that anytime the governments begin to endorse something, maybe we need to take a closer look at it and to see whether it's in our favor or not in our favor. And today I'm not actually here to tell you what you should and should not be doing. I'm here to just lend a couple suggestions so that you can understand, or as I say, understand things better, so that way you can get through your experience as smooth as possible. So the cannabis theory begins with understanding exactly what the plant is and what it actually causes within the body and within your structure and your consciousness. What allows cannabis to make people more creative. Because there's a numerous amount of people, almost countless, that have invented things like music and logos and even grand theories and lots of those kind of, what I would say, innovative approaches and inventions into the reality with the use of cannabis. And so when we look under the fibers of it, literally, what we find is that cannabis is actually a female plant. That the plant that people smoke is the female. The male, obviously, is hemp. And this female's process is actually a process of yearning, meaning that the cannabis plant actually is yearning to pollinate or yearning to actually populate and create with the male plant, which is actually absent. Any person who's ever grown weed knows that the first thing you do is never allow any male plants to be around the female plants. So what happens is that if you can see this plant on an energetic level, what you would actually see is the divine feminine itself. And that's why I think it's always been given names that are synonymous with the ocean, synonymous with the female, Mary, and Mar, Ma, and all of those acronyms. And this is very important for us to realize, because that means that for those who choose to utilize cannabis, it means that they're filling their body with the divine feminine. And this is often why cannabis is often used to sort of patch the hole in people's reality of where they're not getting that divine feminine energy. Cannabis can become somewhat of a panacea or cure-all for people's situations and things that they're dealing with in life. If they're experiencing anxiety, they may smoke cannabis. If they're bored, they may smoke cannabis. If they feel uncreative and dull, they may smoke cannabis. And so what happens is the reason why this plant has become so popular in use is because the reality itself and our interactions with the organic feminine forces has been at an all-time low. And the one thing I'll say is that this is not a male and a female thing. I want you to understand that the divine feminine goes much more further than just the human female. as we've talked about, it's even the cat has a female. Even we see plants have a female. We see frogs, there's females. So it's what's behind those eyes, the force that's behind those eyes that we're talking about, that fills up every single body, whether you're quote unquote a male human or a female human. So at any point where we lack that divine feminine force, whether it's the love from our mother or our grandmother, whether it's the love from a significant other, and what we even see in a moment is whether it's the lack of creativity at any aspect, whether that's having a child or having what we would say is a project that you're passionate about. When you lack that, you may seek to fill that hole with something like cannabis. Now, this goes into something bigger. It's called the Cannabis Theory because it could be applied to anything that incorporates the divine feminine and the divine masculine force. So you can see how these days you have this excessive use of this substance that's filling people's body with this creative force, i.e. dark matter. Because the dark matter is the womb. It cultivates. It creates. Okay? And so it's the exact same force that we use to create. So what happens if we get filled with this force, but we're not creative? This means that we've gotten full of something, but there's no outlet. So what you see in the industry now is, which is why they're encouraging the use of cannabis use, is that you see that the animalistic instinct, which is the root to our creation, it is the foreground, if you may. It's the soil that we grow from. It's also what we will progress back to in the event that we don't fully utilize our human ability. So this is why excessive cannabis use also leads to a person being much more sexual and wanting to populate with someone else. And it leads to, like the music you see today, it's basically, as one song even, they just put it in the title, it's just marijuana and women. And again, because this is not partial to a male or female, it could be for the female, just marijuana and men. So how do you balance out this type of energy? Well, it's very simple. What we'll find is that within every human being, there is the ability that we've been endowed with, which is to be more creative than just people who reproduce. You know, as the first command is reproduce or be fruitful and multiply. But as human beings with this great mind and consciousness that we now have this ability to invent. We can paint. We can play music. We can print things. You know, there's 3D printing. There's many different things that we can begin to engage in that actually are other expressions of our creative force. But if you lack that outlet, what can happen is you will become bottled up. You will yearn for something. Notice how if someone says to you, well, what is your passion? That can relate to your significant other. Well, you know, I'm passionately in love with her, or I'm passionately in love with him. Or it could relate to your craft. You could paint. He's a passionate painter. She's a passionate designer. So be on watch for this. And like I said, it's not just cannabis. It's just the cannabis theory. It gives us a good stamp to put on it, so that way we recognize it in other aspects. Because we can find that we will begin to abuse certain things or overuse certain things. We can even do that with each other. You could make a person your cannabis. Every time you feel anxiety, you call them. Every time you're hurt, you call them. Every time you're bored, you call them. But what's really being desired is that you tap into that creative force and begin to create something within. So that way you become addicted to self.